whether we like to look at it or not, we're all leaders in our own lives.
Yeah.
We're leading our own lives. We're leaders in our own family. We're leaders in our own community. But we're all interdependent of each other.
Everything starts to weave in. So your music will weave in with other things. And
yes,
if you follow that path in your heart, and as men, we have to learn that we have emotion, but we have to understand that we have feelings. And I actually think men, we have a really important part in humanity. I'd like to welcome Paul Seils today to the podcast. I've known Paul for quite some time now. We've been to rallies together. We've been to conferences together. I've had some strategic coaching from him. And I just find him to be a really, really interesting guy with a lot of knowledge in quite a vast array of areas, as well as being a country and western singer.
Both kinds of music.
Yeah. So he's a very, very diverse person with a lot of good intentions, but also he's got some great connections and he knows a very diverse group of people. And so I wanted to have him on here. The main things I want to ask you, Paul, is what are some of the major things that got you to where you are today? And the reason I'm asking that is, for me, I kind of had my past life, I would say, in this life. Then I had a few experiences that happened. And then I got led on this path and I've had quite a few challenges on the way, but every single challenge has made me a better person. So I want to know what got you to where you are and what are some of those defining moments?
Yeah. Well, you're very kind, Nicholas. Thank you. And it's a hell of a ride, huh? Yeah. And the Chinese philosophy, the curse, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
Isn't lost on me. I'm very, very diverse in like what I've, the experiences that I've had. My background was in project management. So I joint ventured with a James Packer company back in the early 2000s for about a decade and built a company to about 65 staff doing project management and design and that sort of thing for the ruling family and all the projects for the world projects and the Palm Island projects and that sort of thing. So my background was in project management, and then that led me into privacy, seeing the current trajectory that the world was on. And then, I get a bit of grief from people because I turn up and listen to what everyone's got to say. I remember years back, like listening to politics and that sort of thing when I thought that was the answer. And I remember in the same week going to see Paul Keating and also Pauline Hanson speak in the same week, and got going into entering the venues and getting spat on for people from both sides of the equation. So I was very balanced out. But it's interesting. But we're all we're on this journey. The old cliche and the saying is we're all sort of walking each other home. And you go through life's ebb and flow and getting involved with privacy and the importance of privacy, which is becoming more important than ever. And then that sort of led into the conversation about cryptocurrency and that sort of thing, which is part of it as well. And getting to meet and spending a lot of time also on my own podcast over the years with different people, including people like David Icke and John McAfee and that sort of thing as well. So I've just got back from spending, the last week in Canberra with Julian Assange's family and that sort of thing as well. So, it was a bit of an historic occasion. Got to go to Parliament House and be witness to the completion conversation around that as far as Julian Assange was concerned and what he's endured and what his family by association has endured as well.
It's been 14 years.
In his 15th year.
15th year.
Yeah.
Being in prison but never charged with anything.
Never charged. Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, he just arrived back in Australia last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in the last
and there's been a lot of protests. There's been a lot of, the Free Assange movement was
huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it grew. And I think with what's been happening in the world over the last couple of years, a lot of people started to go, wait a minute. Maybe 10 years ago, people didn't know it as much, but now it's started to affect kind of everyone in their life. And people like him are one of those heroes that actually spoke up all those years ago and helped to kind of curve the trajectory of what could have been. As we look, and sometimes people look at it as like we're going down a dark path, but we've had many people show up.
Yes.
And there was a saying that I heard the other day, which was next man up, which is, so people like Assange, he took a hit, and other people have been continuing and fighting, and also fighting for his freedom. And so we have all these people that we're all interested in the same thing, in my opinion, which is human freedom, human sovereignty, that everybody should be able to feel safe and feel like they can live their life and live their dreams without interruption from government or whoever, whatever it is.
Yes.
And we have this constant that there'll be someone, and they might get taken down for a little bit, but then it's next man up. Who else is going to come up? Who else is going to continue? I don't like using the word the fight, because I personally think we've already won.
Yes.
But standing up for what is right. And this is one of the things I really like about you is I see you doing that, but then I also see you doing your country music and you're doing your passion. And I do think it's a really important balance, because you can go down and you can be so involved and it can feel quite overwhelming, the pressure. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, that's what sort of led me in from that, and being involved with cryptocurrency and privacy and that sort of thing. And then have been doing coaching and strategy for people for about the last 6 years now. And we're living in interesting times at the moment. And, one of my philosophies in saying with clients as well is that freedom is the new wealth. And a lot of people have a really subjective interpretation about what freedom is. And I'm sort of operate along the lines of more of a libertarian philosophy. And I think for a lot of people, including myself, it's about a discovery of what ultimate freedom looks like, but and also people have subjective interpretation about what sovereignty is. And a lot of people in those sort of organizations or movements or thoughts or, ideologies sort of think it's about, absolute freedom without care, but actually it involves having more responsibility.
Yeah, definitely.
So personal responsibility for your own health, your own well-being and your lifestyle, and then without that impacting on other people as well.
And that's a good thing when you say about ideology. I remember when I got a bit of a wake-up call about ideology, it was when I first moved on to land and acreage.
Yeah.
Because you have this perception and this idea of how things should be, and then you get on the land and you have to evolve and work with the land. And you can have all these ideas and they can sound amazing and incredible, but in reality, they don't actually work.
No.
And that's one of the really important things for me that I've realized is I actually really love community, and I love learning from different people. And there has been, I'm very interested in food and health, and that's my passion, and that's why I'm branded as that health dude. And that's been my personal experience. But one of the things that kind of really shifted in the last few years is that I thought health was my number one value until everything shifted. And I realized freedom's actually my number one core value. But freedom to me also means that people are free to make their own choices. And there's people that have helped me quite profoundly on my specific journey and helped me with skill sets and learning that there's a lot of things that we don't agree with.
Yes.
But that's how you build, and that's how you grow. You have a diversity of ideas and you try some out, they don't work.
Yeah.
You learn, okay, well, maybe the farmer of 50 years actually knew what he was talking about, and me with all my ideas who's just moved from the city and starting to live on the land actually has no idea.
Yeah.
Because this guy's done fencing 1,000 times or he's had animals. And
well, I acknowledge you for that, Nicholas, as well. It's like, someone asked me the conversation about what's missing in relation to what we're dealing with at the moment or moving forward. And it's normally, particularly with our leaders in these current times or what we've endured in the last 4 or 5 years, what's really missing is embodiment. Yeah, just no depth in that. And you have the courage to be able to have the experience. There's a lot of people that have a lot of concepts and ideologies that they're working towards or they espouse, but they're not actually having the experience of it you are. Yeah. It takes courage.
Yeah. Paul Seils, who's one of my mentors, he talks about this time where he spoke at a dietitian's conference.
Yes.
and he calls them obesity conferences because all the dietitians are obese. And there was Paul Chek was talking and he was explaining his philosophy, and the other speaker said, "Oh, that's rubbish." And Paul Chek said, "Well, I'm happy to take my shirt off in front of the crowd. How about you?" And this guy was quite big. Yeah. And so you can have ideas.
Sure.
And they can sound intelligent, and you can share them to a lot of people. But when you actually put them into your body and into your life and into your situation, how does that affect you? And how does that affect those that you love, your dream team, your community?
Yeah.
Because, the idea of people thinking they can do it on their own, it's crazy. It's mental.
It is crazy. Yeah.
And
we need each other.
Truly we do.
Particularly for this transition.
Yeah.
That's coming.
And that's the thing is what I really love is people doing what they're passionate about, what they truly love. And I believe that if something really lights you up, this is the new world, this is the way we're going, is that when you're at that, you're having an experience and you're singing and you're doing all the things that you really, really enjoy, that vibrational frequency shifts onto others. And it almost gives people permission that, hey, you can do that. And things that you enjoy can be quite broad. And Matt Kahn, he's a spiritual guy.
Yes.
And he's very humble, spiritual person. But one of his favorite things is UFC fighting. And, you wouldn't pick that, but it's like you have to own those things that you truly enjoy.
Yes.
And so that kind of gets me on to talking about your music.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, we always grew up with music. We had we had a family band when we were kids.
That's cool.
Yeah, we played together and did the country music festivals and clubs and that sort of thing. Like right back even when Keith Urban was on the scene in Brisbane as well. That's sort of going back like 25 years or something now. And just the appreciation of that. And I think it was something that, you have stages of life and seasons in life, and, sort of went off and was responsible for that sort of thing. And like, it's tough to, particularly post-COVID, for musicians to make a living out of music. But I go backwards and forwards to the US about every 12 or 18 months, and I've got family in Nashville. So it's really what I love to do, and I'd love to be able to, there's a bit of mission and purpose that I've got to fulfill on, particularly for the rest of this decade with what's coming with the Great Reset and that sort of thing. But I really love music because, music is like a spiritual practice for me.
Yeah.
It transcends, like there's no, like whether you're recording and creating or whether you're performing, like the future and the past doesn't exist somehow. You're just purely in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the beauty, like the creative aspect of it as well, like how you get to cooperate and collaborate with other people and then create content, like birthing ideas of the creative process, like has me feel closest to source.
Yeah. And that's what I've learned about spirituality is a lot of people think if I meditate, if I just sit there and do nothing, that I'm spiritual. For me, I feel most spiritual when I'm surfing. I feel most spiritual when I'm hanging out with my goats, when I'm guarding. And all it is it's bringing you into that present moment. And when you're in that present moment, time starts to disappear, and all the, the sorrows of the past and the worries of the future are gone. And that is when you're closest connected to source. And that, again, that's part of that embodiment is just because somebody says that sitting there like this and meditating is going to bring you closest to source. Who says that that's going to work for you? For you, it could be music. For you, it could be whatever it is. And I always encourage my clients and people that follow me to tap into that part of you, because especially for men, like I've kind of had the guidance to shift towards talking and working with more men.
Yes.
And when we follow our purpose, things like depression and all these things, it's not that they disappear, but your purpose is greater than that sorrow. And when people are just working for money or things that don't really drive them on that deep level, this is why I see so many men spiraling with depression, because they've lost who they are.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they're living this robotic life, and they don't even know how to break free of it.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, and it's great doing work around mental work and that sort of thing as well. I read a book a while ago called Manhood. I think it's called Manhood, and then he also had another book called Raising Boys by Stephen Biddulph. And I think particularly in Western society, like there's no rites of passage
definitely
for men, and we're sort of like left to our own devices. Yeah, a lot of us were sort of raised in a very functional way. You know what I mean? It's to have us become the best version of ourselves. A lot of us sort of just found our way.
Yeah. Kind of just fumbled around.
There was no rites of passage. There was no instructions. There was no guidance. And like I'm finding it even now at the stage of life, like there's a real missing with not having any elders and that sort of thing that you can go to. So the only way that you can find it is through the brothers.
Yeah. Awesome. I also wanted to chat about privacy, cryptocurrency, and precious metals.
Yeah.
So how you can start with whatever you feel is most important, and how they kind of weave in to purpose, weave into our future, and the possibilities that you can see.
Well, I'll start with privacy first of all, because I think that's probably the underpinning issue that's the most prevalent and most important at the moment, because even as the famous quote by Edward Snowden was, the current generation of millennials will have no concept of privacy whatsoever. And that's their normal.
Yeah.
And I think that's really a concern when there's so much smart technology that's designed for us to trade our convenience for privacy.
Yeah.
And now with the advent of artificial intelligence that's compounding at an exponential rate at the moment as well. So artificial intelligence or autonomous intelligence is like gathering momentum at quantum amount of speed at the moment, just gathering all the data on everything at the moment. So that interfaces with what we're talking about, like the World Economic Forum and those guys trying to force through their version of Great Reset, which is, pretty much everyone being in constant digital surveillance. And then that interfaces with the central, the digital IDs and then the central bank digital currencies as well, which is like a pretty much, if you look at the end game and extrapolate the timeline out about where it's going, that, it's ultimately like full surveillance and monitoring and like people being digitally, like in digital prisons, which are invisible. And a lot of people like Dr. Robert Malone and General Michael Flynn talk about like fifth generational warfare that we're being subjected to at the moment, and how that has the ability for us, it's like invisible weapons for silent wars. The art of war is the fact that like you sort of getting slowly sort of constrained and hemmed in without anyone knowing there's any fences around there. And that sort of goes also with like geo-blocking and geo-fencing and, the real danger about, they had to force Australia unfortunately seems to be the tip of New Zealand seems to be the tip of the spear in that regard, and they need to force a digital ID through so they can get central bank digital currencies through.
Yeah.
And as soon as that's in place, that means every transaction is tracked, traceable, confiscatable in real time.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's what we're doing in relation to having clients have strategy in place for diversification. So, and then you mentioned about cryptocurrency as well. So cryptocurrency is an aspect of it that encourage people to diversify into. For some people are drawn to it because of the investment or the financial aspect, but people need to have it as a to diversify so that they're able to use it as a currency.
Yeah.
And that's the duality that we're sort of going through at the moment, as well as like having the awareness on like what's happening, but having the focus on what we're creating. I love the freedom and the truth movements and that sort of thing, but a lot of them are addicted to having conversations about the problems all the time. It's like the problem. Yeah. We get an equally invested amount of conversation in solutions about what we're doing to create.
Definitely. And that's
how we want to live in the future.
That's why I realized that I had like my little stint in politics because I believe people were ready for change.
Yes.
And
some people,
but it was a lot smaller than I thought. And in that moment, I had this eye-opening of like, holy shit, things are going to get a lot worse before they get a lot better, because people don't seem to really give a shit.
No.
Now.
Well, it's not necessarily that they don't care. Unfortunately, a lot of people are either completely distracted, or they're in a state of survival at the moment where they're coping with, they're paying mortgages and they're paying for childcare and they're paying for this and they're paying for that, and they're like so stretched.
Yeah.
And I think they rely on the fact that so many people are just sort of trying to exist or survive, or they're completely getting distracted by beer and football.
Yeah.
To be able to know what's happening and just to have the luxury of being able to take the time to be informed about what the issues are and then what's the solutions to diversify into.
Yeah, and this is why I went from there and I was like, okay, what's something I'm really passionate about? And I've always been super passionate about food, and I've always been passionate about getting high quality food because it was such a important part of me getting my health and vitality back. And this is why podcast is called Project Vitality. And so I started going into that solution-based mode.
Right.
Okay, so what can I do to make an impact? And sometimes people can get overwhelmed. Oh, it's too big. It's too big a problem. It's too challenging.
Well, sometimes for people, it's too much of a quantum jump between here to there.
Yeah.
It's like I'm reading a book at the moment called The Compounding Effect.
Oh, yeah, I've got that one.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Just like every day, just small movements every day, like the butterfly effect, just like small movements in that direction every day over a long period of time. And there's a lot of people want to be able to do it, but it's like whatever it is, just start moving in that direction, having the experiences, community gardens, people have got properties, start having that experience and moving in that direction where they want to be.
Yeah, and I truly do. Like I'm quite visionary. It's one of my skill sets. So I can see the impending doom, but I can also see that it's not going to go down that path. Like I truly believe that there'll be some challenges and it'll be quite rough, but I can see on the other side that it's going to be bloody glorious. Yeah. And so this is where that part of play is really important. We do our work. It's like you go to the battle, to win the war, you might lose some battles and you might go out and you get knocked down and then you go home and you regenerate and you fix up your wounds, do the things that bring you joy again.
Yes.
And then you can go out for the next battle. But if you're constantly in battle,
that's it.
And you're missing out on the joy and the experiences of life and all the magic that's there, this war is been going on for a very long time. You're allowed to take a break. You're allowed to breathe.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of people that, particularly with what we've experienced in the last 4 or 5 years, and I spoke at a lot of the rallies and when I was in Australia and in the early days as well, and before I went to the US, and there's a lot of people at the moment are feeling like really like worn out, or whether people are aware of it or not. I just got back from Melbourne as well, and Melbourne's different post-COVID.
Oh, yeah.
It's like people just don't go out anymore. It's like there's a bit of a Stockholm syndrome sort of thing going on there. But it's interesting.
And that's where that next man up comes, because I feel actually fully recharged and ready.
Yes.
And so I've had a bit of a break. I've been doing my thing. So I'm ready for whatever the next thing, wherever I'm supposed to stand up. And so that's where I have the faith that people that might be tired on, say, the front line can take a bit of rest, because there's a whole bunch of us that are ready to go again, and whatever that is.
That's great that you're doing that. I think that's when I was in the US a couple of years ago, one of the speeches that I gave was called Decentralized Now, and how we need to decentralize and it's great that you're taking time out. I think you have to do it regularly as a practice for self-care and self-nurturing. Otherwise, the body breaks down and does it itself.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't do it consciously. But that concept of decentralization and, inspiring leaderless movements as well, that everyone takes their turn, like a flock of birds, you're saying, that just sort of rotates, and the birds sort of rotate in formation.
Exactly.
There's no one particular that's leading. Everyone just takes their turn.
Yeah, it's like I watch it with the goats, where one's the head and then they start headbutting each other, and now you're the head of the herd.
Yes.
And hopefully we don't have to do that, but they actually really enjoy it. They're playing and for who's boss today. And I do think, that leaderless, where people put too much hope on certain celebrities or figures.
Or savior complexes.
Yeah, savior complexes. When
particularly in the US.
Oh, yeah, massively in the US. Australia is really interesting, though, because this is why I think that we're the kind of, I guess, testing ground, and New Zealand is, we are very complacent.
Yeah.
It's like, she'll be right, mate. And people were locked in their houses for months and months and months, and people still didn't seem to be that too bothered by it.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind, because up here we didn't get it anywhere near as Melbourne, and I kind of just did my own thing. And I have always been rebellious in nature, but that doesn't mean I rebel at everything.
Sure.
And that's another thing, like you kind of touched on it earlier, where some systems actually work really well, and they're important. If you look at nature, it's pretty much systemized chaos, and everything works because it's almost chaotic. And when we don't have systems, everything doesn't function. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a person at the top that's like, I'm the leader.
Yes.
But you have to have general respect for each other.
Sure.
And it's almost intuitively. Like, we don't need it to be written down. We know. Treat people how you would like to be treated.
Yes.
Like certain levels of respect. So obviously in the USA, there's this quite a, you're wrong. And
That's all the separation agenda.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've got it to a certain degree. We're a micro version of America.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that separation and, 72 different genders and financial status and, just so much of the separation agenda has people keep feeling that they're polarized or separated from each other rather than people being able to unify.
Yeah, and we definitely have more in common than we have different.
Absolutely.
And this is why I really love it out the hinterland, is because everyone's open for a chat.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things, as I said, we wouldn't probably agree on, but we have a general mutual respect for each other, that everyone's having a go. Everyone's got their own problems. Everyone's got their own challenges. And
well, that's the thing as well, I think, that people forget, is that you can not agree with people but still respect them. And I think that sort of gets largely forgotten.
Yeah, it's a very strong that you disagree with me on this certain subject, so
that's it. Unfriending you.
You're from the dark forces. You're like, what do they call it? Everything's a psyop these days. Everything's Well,
I think that was probably the thing that upset me the most about whatever day it was, the news that Julian Assange was arriving in Australia. And then you've got all the people that are coming out and saying that Julian Assange is a psyop and he's controlled opposition. And I'm like, opposition to what?
Yeah.
Like, people just sort of espouse these things conceptually because they've heard something and they're just repeating again. They don't have any evidence of anything.
No.
But we're living in times where, again, that's being projected onto us at the moment. There's such a diminishment of trust that people can't even just be happy and for someone else that's got their freedom and that their children gets to spend time with them and that sort of thing as well,
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of the movie The Matrix, where anyone can be Agent Smith.
Yes.
So, but most people don't question that they could also be the Agent Smith. Or maybe I'm playing on the dark forces because I think everything's bad in the world, and I've got this negative approach and this kind of that black-pilled approach that, if anything's in the media, that's because they want it to be in the media. And it's like, we live in this day and age where I see miracles and magic happening every single day.
Absolutely.
And if you go down and you just, it's like you're always going to find the evidence you want.
That's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Whatever perspective, like this goes into quantum physics as well. So there is no is world. There is no is reality.
Yeah.
It's just perception.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever point of view or opinion that you hold as truth, you'll always find evidence.
Exactly.
That's the confirmation bias. So
you
got to be careful of what you hold true. And I think, that's like walking the world, walking into the future, moving forward is sort of like, we're in a spiritual war.
Yeah.
And it's a spiritual and a mystic path to be able to walk. So we're in this world and not of it. And just being careful about what we sort of get pulled into as far as agendas and that sort of thing as well, just to be discerning.
Yeah, because there's the chaos and then there's the perfect order, and it's like we're in between, and that's the path. And people who get too struck down in that, like I always teach, feel into your body. Like, how does that feel? Like this constant worry, this constant stress, this constant idea, because we're creators.
Yeah.
So we can create the world that we want. We can create this world of doom and gloom, or we could actually, like, people say, oh, they've got this agenda. I'm like, so what? Like, and people say words like the elite. And I don't look at it. I just think they're a bunch of psychopaths that have an idea.
Yeah.
And they just think that we're stupid enough to.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing as well. I mean, if you look at like the concept or even the languaging, we have to be very careful because we're always creating in thought and then we're creating in what we're speaking in language. And if you talk about what people call the elite, I'd sort of joke about it sometimes and say that we're not outnumbered, we're just out-organized, because the elite's like 0.01% of the population.
Yeah.
And it's just that they're highly organized. The World Economic Forum and the Young Leaders Program and all that sort of stuff, they're highly organized.
Yeah, they got their plan, so they work as a team.
Yeah, and they plan for intergenerational wealth, and they've got structures in place, and they plan for, generations. Whereas, like, talk about the apathy, the tendency of Australia, and the tall poppy syndrome, and that. Do you know how the tall poppy syndrome came about?
Well, I've heard one theory, but you do.
Yeah. Well, the tall poppy syndrome was about like in the convict days, how the convicts, if one of them would try to escape, they'd drag them back and then just flog all of them.
Yeah. And so then, so rather than that person, every time someone tries to step up, come on, we know we're going to get a flogging. And yeah, it is sad because our country is so beautiful. Yeah. And the people are so incredible.
Absolutely.
And
whereas you don't have that cultural agreement in the US. Everyone's like, yeah, great, that's great, good on you. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's different cultural agreements, and that's what some people are they're not conscious of it yet. Yeah. And they'll hear it on the news or someone will repeat it and then they'll believe it as truth and they'll just keep repeating it.
Yeah, and that's the whole, it takes, 100 years of lies being able to, but then it only takes 10 years of truth. Yeah. And we can, the things that are happening, more and more people are realizing quicker. People that I never thought would have realized, wait a minute, that's a bit of bullshit. And that people are talking to me about these things and I'm like, oh, wow. And they're like, yeah, that's a bit of bullshit, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, it fucking is.
Don't bullshit.
Yeah. And so I am seeing that more and more people are realizing that, hey, there is a certain group of, let's call them parasites, that don't actually have our best intention. And just because something is said on the news and just because there's books on it and scientific studies on it doesn't mean it's actually truth, because if you go back and you start looking at the studies and you start looking at these things, they're all funded by the same few people.
Yeah, and like you can't deny what's happening. I mean, there's people in the world that honestly believe that the world's overpopulated and going to reduce it by a certain percentage. Eugenicists and people like Bill Gates, they honestly think they're doing the favor by doing that sort of stuff. That's in their occurring in their reality.
Yeah, and that's
he decided that as soon as someone's like threw a pie in his face, I got to wipe these guys out.
Yeah, he was like, "This, I'll get my ultimate revenge."
Let's get it in slow motion.
Yeah. And so when I see these type of people, like, I'm not really worried about them. I actually feel a bit sorry for them. Like imagine being in that existence where you have something as beautiful as Earth and the people, and you want to get rid of them. And it would be a very lonely and, quite dark place to be. Yeah. And that's their journey, their plan, whatever. And every movie, every story needs a villain. Yes. Because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be that exciting. And so they're, our villains, but we're also our own villains.
Yeah. And we're all a villain in someone else's story.
Exactly. We're a villain, we're the hero. And when I remember when I first started speaking more in the public, and I had this idea of myself that I'm a good guy and I'm honest and I've got integrity and I've got all these things. And then other people had different opinions of me. I'm like, holy shit, like I am the villain to that person. And maybe I am not pure and noble and all these type of things. And maybe I'm just triggering them and helping them in their journey. Or maybe there are some aspects of myself that I need to improve and work on. And that's something
we're always evolving.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. You talked about bits and pieces. We touched on stuff like privacy and cryptocurrency and precious metals and that sort of thing as well. It's like they're all instruments. I say to clients as well, they're all instruments for people to fulfill their mission and purpose into the future, whether it's property, whether it's fiat, whether it's precious metal, decentralized digital currencies, all that sort of stuff. But we're all constantly evolving all the time, and what's important to you now won't be as important to you in 5 or 10 years' time as well.
Yeah.
So we're all evolving individually and collectively. And I think the unfortunate thing about what we've experienced over this last period of time, whether it's even the last 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 20 years, is that unfortunately the human condition is two things. One is that it doesn't seem to be able to people don't seem to make a decision to evolve by choice without trauma, which is interesting.
Well, that's how I did it. I was working for the pub crawls in Surfers Paradise, drinking like a rock star. One morning, I physically couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
And my body wouldn't let me go down that path anymore.
Yeah.
So
that's at the movie in The Matrix where he opens the car door and he goes, you know where that road goes, don't you?
Yeah. That's what happened to me. I had to learn the hard way. Yeah. I had to watch my whole body, my nervous system shut down. And even at that point, I still continued on that same path for a while because that's all I knew. So I have a lot of empathy for people, because when that happened to me, everyone I knew worked in pub.
Yeah.
My whole friendship circle, my whole lifestyle was based around pretty much sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so for me to start going to, I started going to the organic farmers markets on a Sunday, hungover.
Yeah.
And that's how I started. And I go there, and then I get a few of my other friends to come hungover. And then some days we'd go not hungover.
Yeah.
And then some days we wouldn't even go out on Saturday night. And then it started to evolve and shift and change. And so, I do have a lot of empathy for people that they do have to hit rock bottom for it. It's kind of that shock. I wish that we didn't have to go down that path. And it is hard to witness people. You're like, oh God, if you just changed now, you're going to save yourself a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache. But there's something that kind of happens in that shock and awe where it kind of leaves us completely open.
Yeah. And it was very similar for me as well, because I straight out of high school did engineering, did a blue collar trade. And the funny thing was like the ritual used to be like to work your ass off and then just trash yourself on the weekend.
Yeah. Spend.
That's what you did. That's what you worked your ass off. You worked hard. Yeah, you blow all your money.
Yeah.
And all your mates did the same thing as well. But it's, we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to be kind to other people as well, because we're all at different stages in the process. And if someone would have told you at that point in time, you would have told them to get stuck.
Oh yeah, I would have told myself to fuck off. And that's the thing is, like, I always look at the analogy that there's always someone kind of higher on the ladder that can be reaching down to help, but you can always help others.
Yes.
And a lot of people do get this kind of complex that I'm not a leader. I can guarantee you, if you've gone through something, you can help somebody else go through that same thing. And it's because you have that level of empathy and understanding that, oh yeah, shit, I remember that time. That was brutal. My body was broken, but I would still go out and drink.
Yeah.
Okay? And I didn't want to, but I was on this automatic pilot.
It just becomes a cycle.
Yeah.
It's a pattern.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things I encourage a lot of listeners and a lot of people, is that you have this innate gift, this innate wisdom inside of you. And to please start sharing it, because people need people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we need
you said about people not being leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, whether we like to look at it or not, we're all leaders in our own lives.
Yeah.
We're leading our own lives. We're leaders in our own family. We're leaders in our own community.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no, I don't believe, like I said, I don't believe in hierarchical systems, but we're all interdependent of each other. And
that's the beauty, is that everything starts to weave in. So your music will weave in with other things. And if you follow that path in your heart, and as men, we have to learn that we have emotions, and, it's okay.
What?
Yeah, I know. What? That's mental. But we have to understand that we have feelings. And I actually think men, we have a really important path in humanity, which is part of the playful. We're actually very playful characters. And if you look at how many times a kid laughs compared to an adult.
Yes.
And so we kind of lose that innocence and nature. And I think to us men, we're really good at bringing that back. And we can have that strong leadership and that strong masculine energy, but we can also have that bit of cheek, that bit of play. And that is the part of the Australian character that I like, is we are the larrikins, but we also have to, in certain areas, stand up for what we believe in. And I think the reason a lot of people don't stand up for what they believe in, because, as you said, they're distracted. They don't actually know what they believe in anymore. They've kind of lost themselves. And I'm noticing more and more people coming home because of the soothing tools that they used, which were the alcohol and the drugs and the sports and the porn and, you know, all the distractions. They're not working anymore for so many people. And this is that part of evolution that I'm excited about, is no matter how many Netflix things that they put on, people are kind of shifting away and they're moving towards, you know what, maybe I won't watch that tonight. Maybe I'll do something else. Maybe I've
looked at Netflix a couple of times. There's a lot of trash.
Oh, it is. It's a go. And, you know,
a lot of it's programming.
Yes. It's one thing I really love about when you realize things are programmed. You kind of, if you watch something, you're like, oh wow, there was that little message and that, and it actually becomes quite fun, because I also think there's a lot of programming for what you would call the light as well as the dark, and it's definitely hidden in plain sight. And the symbology and all these type of things that, you know, sometimes people can get a bit carried away by that, because as I said, everything is dark. And I don't believe everything is dark. I truly believe that we are evolving, and it's like, if you look at evolution, it doesn't happen slow. Something major happens and it kind of accelerates, and then we kind of shift. And I think that's what we're at, this breaking point of every single system that we have known in our lifetime, our parents' lifetime, and pretty much our grandparents' lifetime is falling apart in front of our eyes. And we can cry victim, and we can...
You can if you want to. It doesn't help.
You can, or you can create. And we can come back into that creative life force. And
well, this is the interesting thing as well, Nick. It's like, you know, like you're talking about Australians and colloquialism and that sort of thing as well. It's like, you know, hi, how you doing? You know, it's like shifting the conversation around that at the moment, rather than saying that, which is sort of like a throwaway line. It's like, what are you creating?
Go on. It's interesting. Like, I don't really go to supermarkets anymore, but if you go to a shop, and even if you say someone's name on their name badge, they're kind of, it's so used to that. Hey, how you going? Good. And there's no depth. There's no, I don't know.
Presence.
There's no presence. And like, I do see it coming back, and maybe it's because where I live, there's a lot more people that are kind of drawn.
You go to Melbourne.
I've been to Sydney's not just the similar. I remember going onto an airport, and Mum normally would pick me up from the airport, but I don't know what's happening. She was out, and so I just jumped on the train to go to where I needed to go. And because where I lived, Mum lives, is right near a train station, and everyone was wearing black. Everyone was on their phone. No one smiling. No one laughing. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, I couldn't even get eye contact with anyone because everyone had their head down. And in the background was the train message that wear a mask. It was on repeat. And it was such I remember getting myself with a photo with, like, it said wear a mask, and I was like this with no mask on. And it is quite surreal that we have got to that place where people are moving towards that. You know, they're chasing money and success, but they've lost themselves in the process. And I guess for me, that's where I kind of love the work that you do. It's yes, it's privacy. Yes, it's cryptocurrency. Yes, it's silver. But it's
strategy.
But it's strategy on, like, what the hell do you want in your life? And are you going to fight for it? Are you going to protect it? Are you going to do, rather than just moving forward? Like, what's your actual plan? What's your actual? Where's your boundaries?
That's it. And that's what we talk about people as well. Like, we were talking about timelines and that sort of thing. There's actual multiple timelines running simultaneously. It's just like, which one are we going to be anchored into? And the cliche that I have with clients as well is like, plan for the best and prepare for the worst. So whatever happens, happens. But, you know, there are a lot of people. I thought that humanity evolved a lot as well, probably in the last 10 or 20 years. But you'd be surprised how many conversations that I have with people that have said that they didn't have any choice
Oh,
to take.
the poison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's always choice.
Well,
But there's just perception.
there's perception, and there's, I get where people come from, but that's a very short-sighted. It's like, I had no choice because I needed to keep my job. I needed to. But it's like, yeah, but your whole health, so you and your family and your loved ones, this was a very critical decision.
Yes.
And I know many people that have lost jobs. A lot of them are now getting compensated quite a lot of money, and that will continue to happen because they got fired or let off. There was no law. It was just all made up.
Directives.
Yeah, it was all made up. So the people that actually stood their ground are now actually going to be financially better off than the people who did it, and they've got their health, and they've got their, the aspect of themselves that stood up for what they believe was right. And yes, some people maybe didn't see the bullshit.
Yeah. Hopefully they do now.
Well, if you don't see it now, then you
maybe
can't.
Never will.
Maybe there's hope. I always believe in hope. Like, I'm not. People sometimes think that I'm pessimistic. I'm actually a very optimistic person.
Yeah, I am too.
But I'm like you. I plan for the worst.
Yes.
And I'm not afraid to talk and speak what I believe is truth and my opinions.
Yeah.
And I'm also not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. And change certain things that I do. Like, I don't want to get into politics too much, but I remember when I used to think Trump was the worst person in the world, and that was because of what was in the media. In the media. Yeah. And I just went, and I remember I thought Pauline Hanson was the worst person in the entire world. And people that actually, there's certain aspects of both their personalities I don't really sometimes agree with, but they're very, I guess, consistent on their message, and they're very, you watch how media manipulates things.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because like most people don't actually have their own experience of something. It's been projected, or they've taken it for someone. Like, circling back to the start of the conversation about being down in Canberra, was the first time I've actually been inside of the Australian Parliament, which I found super interesting. So part of the meeting I got to attend was with Julian's father, John Shipton. Yeah. For all the political parties had come together with different representatives, including people like Andrew Wilkie and Peter Wish-Wilson and those guys, and they had a completion conversation about dissolving the group for bringing Julian Assange home, the Friends of Assange. Yeah. And they joked about it, saying that like it was all the political parties, like Greens, Labor, Liberal, Nationals, whatever you want to call it, and they'd all worked together to fulfill on. And it really shifted my context about like what the possibility of the future's about creating. And you were right with what you said, that we have more in common than what we do that separates us. Yeah. And I think that it's intentionally projected outwards to keep us separate from each other.
Oh yeah, it's projected that to be afraid of your neighbor, to be afraid of everybody. And
different skin color, different genders, different socioeconomic status. Yeah. All those things.
And it's all bullshit. Yeah. And the truth is that most people are pretty decent people. That's just the reality of it. Yeah. Most people would be there for you if you needed them.
Well, this is the other thing. So that was the second part of the thing I was going to say to you about humanity. Yeah. And over the last 10 or 20 years, or particularly after the last 5, like what is it about the human condition that people don't care about what happens to other people until it happens to them? So why can't just people have a vested interest in something that works for everyone, not just them?
Yeah, and it's definitely different. Like, I talk about living in the hinterland and living out. The other week, I was driving and I ran out of petrol. I've got an old Land Rover, can't get geofenced in because it's got no computers. But I was driving and the dial's really hard to kind of read. I just completely forgot. Yeah. And I ran out of petrol. And in that moment, I was not worried whatsoever because within 15 minutes, I'd been picked up, taken to the petrol station, filled up, and taken back to my car by someone different and was back on the road.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's kind of like, when you know that when you're down in the dumps, there's going to be people there for you. And that's just, a small example, but there's so many times where I've seen people be helpful and look out for people.
But that's also inside your karma as well, Nick. The
Yeah,
fact
true.
that if you were in that situation and you saw somewhere else, we saw someone in that situation, you would be inclined.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your energy would be at a frequency that'd be forthcoming for you. That we like. And you talked about like the analogy of nature, which is really beautiful. I'm sitting here in nature at the moment, but all nature operates by symbiosis as well. The flowers, the bees and the flowers extract, like it's not like just give me. It's all there's all symbiosis there that works in with each other in harmony.
Yeah, and I think there's that part of humanity where maybe it's like people are a bit empty, so they need more. And so because they're running on empty, they don't think that they give. But it's almost like a cliche, because actually when you give more, you receive more.
Yeah.
You just have to have that trust and faith that you will be provided for, and there is support. And I do think it's super important that yes, we look out after ourselves, but one of the things we teach in the Czech Institute is what's your dream team?
Yeah.
Who are your dream team? And start to draw these people in.
Yes. Because
you cannot do it on your own. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
No.
All right. And that's why I invited you here. So, I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I surround myself with these people that.
Well, that's great as well. I was just going to say that in relation to like, smart or intellect.
Yeah.
There are a lot of very intelligent people that fell for the agenda in the last 4 or 5 years. But like looking at it, like you have intellectual intelligence, then you have an emotional intelligence, and then you have a spiritual intelligence.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people that were very mentally intelligent, like had intellectual IQ, that still fell for the agenda.
Well, yeah, and that's my perception of that, is that a lot of that intelligence is just repeated. So you're looked at in society now. If you can do a quiz and you can get the right answers because the information's repeated, but not questioning the answers.
Yes.
If you
you've got a good memory.
Yeah, you've got a good memory. Yeah, you're good at repeating. But when you actually question things and think, and it's like the whole education system, it's all a part of this. It's designed to create workers.
Yes. Because
workers are easy to control and you can move them, and people that are self-employed and entrepreneurs and people that, the system's actually designed quite well for entrepreneurs and people that think outside the box, because there's lots of loopholes and tax benefits, and there's all these things that if you actually don't participate in that path, you're better off, because you're actually contributing more to society. And so I do think that the intelligence thing was really funny, because I was like, are people actually that intelligent? And we have built our society on, that person's intelligent because they're this career. And I saw a lot of people that were that career that are just spouting bullshit. And then there's people that are humble and just kind of just do their own thing and maybe live off grassroots, and they've got this level of intelligence that's far beyond the mind.
Yes.
Like you speak to farmers, they know, they know which way the rain normally comes over the ridge and what's happening there, and the sun and this.
Yeah, when the swallows fly close to the ground.
Yeah, they know. Rain's going to come. Yeah. They know, because they're connected with the diversity of not just something that's been repeated on a box, whether that box is a phone, a computer screen, or a television, that they think outside that box. And it was extremely interesting, because there was arguments where it's like, who we're going to listen to, the doctor or like our mate Joe from high school? And so, well, your mate Joe from high school is actually pretty bloody intelligent, because he saw through the biggest propaganda marketing campaign.
I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. I spoke at the rallies publicly and that sort of thing as well. Got shadow banned off social media. I had a group with like 12,000 members that got deleted. 2 YouTube channels got deleted. I remember having conversations with people and saying, hey, you might want to think through this a little bit more. And I remember having a conversation with one guy, and he was like, I trust my doctor. I don't trust Dr. Google. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay. Yeah. It's also allowing having the discernment in this day and age as well, Nick, about you do have to pick your battles. Like with what we started, you got to know when to pick your battles. Yeah. And then also to a certain degree, you've got to allow people to have their own journey as well.
Well, you can't, it's like you said, you can't, if you tell someone, they'll be like, no.
Yeah. Got to use reverse psychology.
You got to, but I get it. it's like with the doctors. I trust my doctor. I always go back to when they used to spray kids with DDT.
Yes.
And then someone questioned that. Hey,
And I'll sign with Mortein with DDT in it.
Do you think we should be spraying kids with poison? And everyone's like, well, of course, it's safe. But then somebody questioned that. And so whenever someone says the science is...
Why are your arms and legs falling?
Yeah. The science is settled is the exact opposites of science. And so that, doctors used to recommend Camel cigarettes and all these things. And when you actually look at modern medicine and you do research on how it's funded, where the training comes from, and all these things, and this is probably, I think, the biggest challenge is we were born into this war.
Yes.
So it was already well and truly grounded and started before. So the reality we were born in that we thought was truth. And this is where people think that after, the onward scam, that it's going to go back to normal. It's like, it never is, because number one, that wasn't normal, it was mental.
Yeah.
And so that will continue to disintegrate because we're moving towards truth. We're moving towards evolution. And so it's a little bit scary because that world that we all knew is not there. But there is sort of aspects of it that will come with us.
Yeah.
I truly believe the better aspects will come. And I think humanity will show more. We will get humbled and we will keep coming back to what makes us human, what makes us thrive individually. It's like the I, we, all principles that we teach as Czech practitioners. Okay, so who am I? Who's my dream team? Who are we? And then what's my message to the world? And some people are very much stuck in the we, and some people are very much stuck in the I. And so the people that are stuck in the I, that they don't even realize there's a dream team. They don't even care about anybody else. And so what happens is your whole world will crumble until you realize you actually need people and your shallow existence is not serving you. And then, the people that are in we, where they're always worried about everyone else, they will have their journey where they'll have to come back to look after their own health. And this is where I was talking about where in the war, sometimes, you go out in the battle and then you've got to come back and you've got to look after yourself and you've got to repair and fix up those wounds and have that cry and, feel sorry for yourself and do all the things.
Stages.
Yeah, all the stages of sorrow and grief and
anger,
despair and anger and all that type of stuff. And then you kind of take that responsibility and go, okay, it happened, acknowledge it, and then you move forward again. And if you have that bigger vision, you can do that. Whereas if you don't have that bigger vision, you can kind of fluctuate between the fuck everybody. And, I'm just going to look after myself and I don't trust everyone and everyone's part of the dark forces and everything's a psyop and all that type of nonsense. Or we can actually, if you pop that vision and understand that you are creator, and it's like, just because all these crazy psychopaths have a lot of money and a lot of wealth and a lot of power doesn't mean that they're more powerful creators than we are.
No.
Like, the way I look at it is God, source, whatever you want to call it.
Great spirit.
They've thrown the dream team in.
Yeah.
Happens that we're the dream team, which it's kind of a bit of a cosmic joke because I'm like, fuck, they sent me. Like, I must be, but they sent the dream team down.
And we found each other.
Yeah, when we all found each other and they sent us down to dismantle this bullshit. And
to hold the space for the transition.
Yeah. And it's great to be alive in this time. And I think that we have to acknowledge that the chance of being here is pretty small.
Yeah. And the probability.
Yeah.
Like, even for us to be born at this point in time, I mean, someone was told me like 1 in 47 trillion or something.
Yeah.
The odds.
And so whether you believe in spirit or you don't believe in all those other things, that this earth is like the final show. Everyone wants, every spirit, all the advanced civilized, they all want to be here for this, because this is where we either evolve or we repeat the same karma and process. And I do think that it's a close call, but I also believe that we've got this. And, that's why I like to interview people that are, they've had their own experiences, they've had their challenges, but they also
found out everything that wasn't it.
Yeah, everything that wasn't it. And shit, I thought this was it. No, not start again. But in that process, even through all that despair, all the things we talked about, they've continued on the path that there's hope and that we can do this.
Yes.
And I guess that's in finishing this, I feel that is the message, that find who you are, find your tribe, find your bigger purpose, and start putting yourself out there. Don't be afraid to do the different things. Like, you don't need to be, like, I've got a very diverse group of things that I enjoy. And I'm not afraid to explore them and to learn about them and practice them and challenge myself. And don't be afraid to surround yourself with people that may have slightly different opinions to you as well.
Yeah.
Because you will...
What's the point of keeping company with people, everyone that agrees with you?
And that's the thing, is if you do keep company with every single person that agrees with you, it's like, for example, if all your friends like the same football team, and then your football team, like, you know, I'm from New South Wales, and then you've got, in Australia, we've got this thing called State of Origin. And I remember moving to Queensland, I think New South Wales lost 7 years in a row. And so, like, as someone from New South Wales, it's like, well, this is a horrible experience. Like, but then
It's just a game.
it's just a game. But like,
Right.
and then I was like, you know what? I don't even want to like watch my team lose. I'm going to go and experience something else. And there's a world outside of that. I don't need to.
It's all constructed.
It is.
Everything, including borders, is all constructed.
Oh yeah, and it is. And the fact that we had the worst lockdowns in the world, and there's literally just an imaginary border, and you can't walk past there. A lot of people do. They just walk along the beach, and they just, you know, that rebellious spirit of Australia. But many people complied, and it was very, very harsh. And the goal, I guess, to finish, the goal was to divide us. And that is the continued goal. The goal is to keep you in fear, to divide us, for you to believe that there's no hope. Because as soon as you are in that space, you can't create. But when you are out of that space, you can go...
Anything's possible.
Yeah, anything. You've got a plan, great. Good on you, Klausy. Good on you, you know, Bill Gates. I'm not going to eat maggot milk.
Yeah,
you know?
going that way.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you can have your maggot milk. You can, you know, you hang out with your psychopathic friends.
Yeah.
We're going this way. And as I said, I feel like we almost need that villain so that we can grow into our potential.
Yeah. That's the duality of it.
Yeah. Play that bigger part and play that best version of ourselves.
Yeah. Because ultimately it's driving. We were about to enter an accelerated, like a quantum level of growth at the moment.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have those adversaries, we wouldn't be accelerating as quickly as we are.
Yeah, we'd still be she'll be right, man.
That's it, should be right. What's on neighbours?
Oh, is that show?
No idea.
I don't have a TV.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah. All right, awesome, Paul. I think that has been a great interview. There'll be in the show notes. There'll be a little bit about Paul and what he does, his tunes, all the magic that he does. So thank you very much for coming. And
good on Nick.
I look forward to, I always look forward to, I look forward to watching what you do, our future. And you said you're going to America again at some point.
Back to the US.
Back in the States. So it's got to be a very interesting year with 2024, and there's a lot happening.
There is a lot happening. And I'm just going to close it out with as well as talking about people having their sovereignty and the discipline of what they're thinking about and what they're choosing their thoughts independently. But I saw someone asked Elon Musk who did they think was going to win the 2024 US election. And he just laughed about it and said, "You mean which AI is going to win the 2032 election?"
Oh, God.
So
very interesting.
Yeah. So people keep their focus and their faith and stay in the conversation with what you want to create, what you're out to create. Otherwise, you'll just end up getting swept into other people's timelines.
Yeah, it's like that movie, The Matrix. No one ever asks how the people got in the pods.
No,
my personal belief is they all jumped in there.
Yeah.
And, we've got to decide where we go. And we're so bloody powerful, and it's just a phenomenal place to be right now. And I just don't think we acknowledge where we're at and the possibilities are there. So if anyone's in a dark space, hope. Hope it's one of the greatest things, and we can get back into that hope with a bit of discipline and a bit of strategy. And surrounding yourself with the right people can do absolute wonders. So thank you all for coming. Project Vitality podcast. Look forward to seeing you all soon.
Much love.